From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
All of us are still grieving and in shock from the tragedy that took place.
With regard to Congresswoman Gifford's recovery, at this phase in the game, no change is good, and we have no change.
The rhetoric about hatred, about mistrust of government, about paranoia of how government operates.
Look, we have extremists in my country. A wonderful, incredibly brave young woman Congress member, Congresswoman Giffords, was just shot by an extremist in our country.
Terror in Tucson as Arizona gunman Jared Loughner appears in court in Phoenix. Congressmember Gabrielle Giffords remains in critical condition. We'll speak with a former classmate of Loughner who sat behind him in poetry class. We'll also talk to the head of the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Southern Arizona, as well as Arizona State Legislator Matt Hines. He was just sworn into office yesterday. He's also a Tucson doctor. What will the legislature do? And we'll speak with President George W. Bush's former Surgeon General, Richard Carmona. He now works at the Pima County Sheriff's Department. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Obama's heading to Tucson, Arizona today to attend a memorial service for the victims of Saturday's shooting attack that left Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords critically wounded, 6 others dead, and 13 others wounded. On Monday, the accused gunman, Jared Lee Loughner, appeared in a Phoenix court for his arraignment. Officials also released a mugshot of Loughner that shows the 22-year-old man smiling into the camera, his head shaved. A moment of silence was observed Monday across the country as well as aboard the International Space Station. The commander of the space station is Scott Kelly, Giffords' brother-in-law. He sent his message from space.
As I look out the window, I see a very beautiful planet that seems very inviting and peaceful. Unfortunately, it is not. These days, we're constantly reminded of the unspeakable acts of violence and damage we can inflict upon one another, not just with our actions, but also with our irresponsible words.
Scott Kelly is the brother of astronaut Mark Kelly, who is married to Congressmember Giffords. It was revealed yesterday that less than 24 hours before she was shot, Congressmember Giffords wrote a letter to a prominent Kentucky Republican expressing a desire to find ways to tone down rhetoric and partisanship. The Tucson shooting has also renewed a national debate about gun control. Democratic Congressmember Carolyn McCarthy of New York and Senator Frank Lautenberg of New Jersey said they plan to introduce legislation targeting the high-capacity ammunition clip used by Loughner in the attack. McCarthy ran for Congress after her husband was gunned down and her son seriously injured in a shooting in 1993 on the Long Island Railroad. In other news, a Colorado man appeared in court Monday on charges of threatening the staff of Democratic Senator Michael Bennet. According to the arrest affidavit, John Troy Davis called Bennett's office last week and threatened to set fire to the perimeter of the office and to shoot all the senator's staffers. The 44-year-old Davis was reportedly complaining about his Social Security benefits. Former House Majority Leader Tom DeLay has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for illegally funneling $190,000 in corporate donations to Republican legislative candidates in Texas. After the sentencing, DeLay was released pending an appeal. In addition, DeLay will be forced to serve 10 years of community service for a separate felony conviction of money laundering. Defense Secretary Robert Gates said today North Korea is becoming a direct threat to the United States and could develop an intercontinental ballistic missile that could hit Alaska or the West Coast within 5 years. Gates made the comment during a visit to Beijing. The New York Times described Gates' remarks as a significant shift for the Obama administration, which until now has viewed Pyongyang as a proliferation threat. The Times reports the assessment may fuel a movement to expand a military base at Fort Greely, Alaska, armed with interceptor missiles designed to stop a North Korean missile before it hits the United States. On a surprise trip to Afghanistan, Vice President Joe Biden said today the United States may keep troops in Afghanistan after 2014 if requested by the Afghan government. Biden said, quote, "We're not leaving if you don't want us to leave." Up until now, the Obama administration has been publicly saying the United States will transfer responsibility for security to Afghan forces in 2014. The outgoing head of the Israeli spy agency Mossad is facing criticism after he admitted Iran's alleged nuclear weapons program does not pose an imminent threat to Israel. On his last day as head of the Mossad, Meir Dagan said last week he does not believe Iran will have nuclear weapons capability before 2015, following a series of failures that had set its nuclear program back by several years. Dagan's comments have received little attention in the United States but caused a stir in Israel. Saver Plucker, senior editor of the Israeli paper Yediot, has described Dagan's assertion as, quote, one of the most historically important statements to have been made in the past 10 years in the state of Israel. A post on Fox News accused Dagan of sabotaging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's efforts to build a firm international coalition against Iran. Israel's coming under international criticism for bulldozing the Shepherd Hotel in East Jerusalem to make way for 20 new homes for Jewish families. The hotel was built in the 1930s for Muslim Grand Mufti Haj Amin Husseini. In 2009, Israel's City Hall approved plans to replace the hotel with apartments, despite Washington raising concerns with Israel's ambassador in the United States. At the time, Prime Minister Netanyahu responded by saying Jews have a right to live anywhere in Jerusalem. On Monday, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton condemned the project, saying it would undermine peace efforts to achieve the two-state solution. UN spokesperson Martin Nesserti also criticized Israel's move.
The Secretary General deplores yesterday's destruction of the Shepherd's Hotel in occupied East Jerusalem to make way for new settlement units in the heart of a Palestinian neighborhood, which only serves to heighten tensions. It is deeply regrettable that growing international concern at unilateral expansion of illegal Israeli settlements is not being heeded. Such actions seriously prejudice the possibility of a negotiated solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Secretary General once again calls on the government of Israel to take whatever steps are necessary to freeze settlement activity anywhere in occupied territory.
In Tunisia, at least 35 people have died in recent days as a result of clashes with police during protests. The International Federation for Human Rights say the death toll may be as high as 50. On Monday, the Tunisian Education Ministry closed the country's schools and universities indefinitely. Youth unemployment has been a motivating factor in the protests, as well as government censorship. Tunisian President Zain El Abidine Ben Ali, who has described the protests as terrorist acts, has promised to create 300,000 jobs. Critics of Ben Ali remain skeptical, however, suggesting the president's making empty promises. In Australia, at least 10 people have died and 78 people remain missing after unprecedented flash floods tore through southern Queensland. The dead include a 4-year-old boy who drowned after falling out of a rescue boat. This is the Australian Prime Minister, Julia Gillard.
The nation does need to brace itself for the fact that the death toll as a result of yesterday's flash flooding and walls of water is likely to rise.
The floods are now threatening Brisbane, Australia's third-largest city. In news from Peru, the American activist Lori Berenson was back in court yesterday requesting she be allowed to remain free on parole. Last year, she was released after serving nearly 15 years of her 20-year sentence. Berenson told the court she wished to devote her life to her 20-month-old son, Salvador.
I don't believe I am a danger to society. I recognize my responsibility for the crime I committed, and I am sorry for it. Now that I am living in society, I am completely dedicating my time to my son. I am responsible for him. It is my right and duty. It is a beautiful right, and I hope I won't lose it.
If Lori Berenson's request is denied, it could mean separation from her son, as children are not allowed to stay with their mothers in prison past the age of 3 in Peru. Berenson was convicted in 1996 by hooded Peruvian military judges of collaborating with the rebel group MRTA. The Guardian newspaper has revealed new details about how a British police officer spent 7 years infiltrating the highest levels of the environmental protest movement in Britain and around Europe. The officer, Mark Kennedy, reportedly took part in almost every major environmental protest in the UK from 2003, and his involvement ran so deep he's now being accused of crossing the line from undercover cop to agent provocateur. In 2009, Kennedy's cover was blown when activists found his passport. Kennedy is now offering to help activists he once spied on, including activists who were charged with conspiring to shut down a coal-fired power station in 2009. Once Kennedy began assisting their defense team, prosecutors dropped the charges. In business news, Duke Energy has acquired Progress Energy in a nearly $14 billion deal, creating the nation's largest utility company. The joint company will also become the third largest provider of nuclear power in the country. Analysts say the merger may help Duke expand its nuclear capacity in an attempt to build new reactors. Jim Warren of the North Carolina Waste Awareness and Reduction Network said, quote, Duke's purchase of Progress is being seen largely as an effort to power up financially to build nuclear plants. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange appeared in a London court today as his lawyers attempt to fight his extradition to Sweden for questioning about alleged sex crimes. A full two-day extradition hearing has been set for February 7th. And anti-torture activists are planning to march from the White House to the Justice Department this morning to protest the 9th anniversary of the opening of the Guantanamo prison. The protest organizers, Witness Against Torture, say the march will be led by 173 people wearing hoods and jumpsuits to represent the 173 men still held at Guantanamo. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy